versus Man of Steel.
Hey everybody, I am Vince of Geekvolution and welcome to Vince Versus. That's right, today on Vince Versus I'm taking on the Man of Steel. Why? Because I must. I just have to. I gotta say that I don't feel like this is a movie that can be adequately reviewed as a non-spoiler review. Basically, if I were to give a non-spoiler review, I would outline some of the stuff that I liked, some of the stuff I didn't like, and then say, guys, you should really go see the movie because it's worth your time. It's worth going to see. It's definitely worth your $10 or however much you're going to spend to go to your particular theater in your area. I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I was a little excited for it, so I wasn't disappointed. I went and got what I thought I was going to get. I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, I do have some stuff, and I do want to say, guys, that I want to emphasize that this is a spoiler review. So if you don't want to know what happens in the movie, don't watch this review. Also, I would like to say that there's a difference between liking a movie and having issues with a movie. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can both like a movie and have issues, even significant issues with the movie, and still enjoy it. So these two things are coinciding, especially for me. I have mixed feelings about some of the things in this movie, but I still really liked it. So let's move on from there. The big thing, and I don't think anybody would really be surprised by me saying this, but the visuals are pretty. They're not necessarily pretty as in, look how beautiful they are, but pretty as in really intricate, really interesting, and I highly approve of a lot of the really bold choices that they made on some of this stuff. Like, I thought it was really interesting, instead of just having a little monitor, having the machines form into the shape of a person's face or whatever they're looking at, or what have you. I think that's really interesting. It's an interesting choice. I think the ships are really interesting. The costumes are really interesting. The fight scenes are extremely epic and amazing looking. It's a very intriguing looking movie. There's a lot of stuff there. Now that being said, there's stuff that's I do applaud a movie that is willing to let its visuals, it's willing to let what you see on screen take up in the place of dialogue and things of that kind. Now, one of the things I noticed going through was that there wasn't a lot of dialogue, and it was really pretty. Well, it wasn't quiet. There's lots of explosions, but the characters aren't gabbing all the time, and they don't have to 100% explain things to you. It lets you kind of take the trip with you. I kind of felt like as a surface, just as a cursory glance at what was going on in the movie, you look at a lot of the bullies and a lot of the Kevin Costner scenes, and you say to yourself, man, it looks like all Clark Kent did when he was a kid was get bullied. Well, no, it's not necessarily. They're showing you the significant scenes, and scenes that are significant to this kid's life, that are building toward him being an amazing man, as opposed to a curious kid. So we have scenes in Smallville or just around Smallville, where people where they're really learning opportunities for the young Clark Kent. Now, and then that's when Kevin Costner's character gets to step in, you know, Mr. Kent gets to step in and say, hey son, let me teach you some things. And you know, he's not a man without fault, and I thought that was really interesting that they allowed him to make mistakes and make choices that were maybe not strong choices, maybe not choices that are bright even, but I think he was thinking more with his heart than he was with his head. They'll take this kid away from me if this secret ever gets out. And so he has to be stern about things that seem really innocent. And I found some of those scenes grating, hard on the nerves even. And of course I did say this is a spoiler review, so spoiler review. But the scene in which Mr. Kent dies, I felt that scene was a little contrived. Like you would think that Mr. Kent would not need to go out there and get the dog. First of all, it's a dog. He's going to go retrieve a dog. He's going to go trade his own life for the life of a dog. That I felt kind of interesting. You know, and I love animals. I'm just saying that I think people's lives are slightly more important, and I thought it was kind of a strange choice to say that he needs to go save the dog. But especially since the reason why, it looks to me the reason why he wasn't able to save the dog and himself was that he wasn't young enough to go out there and perform feats of athleticism. Clark Kent could have gone out there and gotten that dog a lot easier than he could, and made it look like he had nothing that would... I mean, I suppose Mr. Kent goes out into the tornado. Well, not into the tornado. Immediately, anyway. He goes out into the danger zone around the tornado and says, I'm going to go do this. Well, he doesn't explain it, but he says, he thinks to himself, I'm going to go do this because if anything were to happen to my son, people would very much so know that he has powers and that he is not of this world. Well, things like that have already happened, and this is the least risky situation. He could have run out there, got the dog, and come back. Anything that people would have seen happen, they would have seen at a distance. And so he could have ripped his seatbelt out of a car, you know, whatever. And people wouldn't have known any different. The car would have been sucked up anyway. So all I'm saying is I don't mind the fact that they sacrificed Pa Kent to... I thought that was Pa Kent. That they sacrificed him in the movie to keep Kal-El's secret. I think that's interesting. I think that's an okay choice. It's a strong choice, but I didn't think that the way they did it was really significant enough. Now, of course, a dog's life is worth saving. Please, animal lovers, don't jump up. I'm just saying, I thought that maybe if there was a kid that couldn't get out of his seatbelt, it would have raised the stakes a little bit. It would have made it seem more necessary for him to go out there. But anyway, let's move on a little bit. Yeah, I liked Cavill's performance. I think that I think he could have been given a little more of an opportunity to show his range, but especially with the last scene, especially. See here, one of the complaints that I had, it seems that other people have as well, and I thought that, now I'll say this. When I say this word, you guys are going to go, oh yeah, I get it. But collateral damage is okay to a certain extent in this movie. Superman is given essentially two choices. He says, either I can save people, or I can save a moderate amount of people from these falling buildings and potentially doom the world in the process by not trying to defeat the Kryptonians. Or I could just go defeat the Kryptonians and have to just deal with the fact that people are dying in Metropolis or wherever. So he makes the lesser of two evil choices, essentially. He has to go destroy a machine instead of just flying around trying to save people who would likely die anyway in the onslaught of the terraforming machines on the planet. So, that collateral damage, completely understand. Collateral damage that he can't control, where he's being hit through buildings, he can't control that. That's okay. The thing that I had issue with is when he would, like for example, in Smallville, where Superman flies and smashes, and he essentially tries to get Jor-El away from his mother, Martha Kent, but he leaves a group of Kryptonians around her. Who's to say they wouldn't just kill her? Who's to say that just because he grabs their leader and flies him into the middle of town, which I'll get to in a minute, who's to say that this is even worthwhile choice? He's not necessarily saving Martha Kent by tackling, not Jor-El, I think I said Jor-El, Zod. He hits Zod. I'm displeased with myself at this moment. Anyway, retroactively, Zod and the Kryptonians are attacking Martha, trying to figure out where Clark Kent is. Hooray. And Superman, or whatever, trying to figure out where the pod is. The Kryptonian device that they're looking for. So Kal-El smashes into Zod and flies him into the middle of town, which I'll get to in a minute. And so he leaves Martha Kent with those Kryptonians. I found that a displeasing choice, because it's him hitting one guy, sending him somewhere else, isn't solving the problem. It doesn't. Anyway. So, in my mind, they probably should have, or not necessarily should have, but would have taken her captive up into whatever, up into their spaceship and read her mind like they did, like they did Kal-El, and it makes more sense. They would have read her mind, they would have used their devices, but that's not what happened anyway. And so Clark Kent Superman smashes into Zod and sends him into the middle of Smallville. Now, Smallville, small town, most of the area around it's going to be rural, and not a lot of it is going to be occupied by more than one family at a time and maybe some cattle. So he takes him to the center of town. I thought that was weird. Now, I get that he's trying to use his surroundings. I don't mind the idea that he's breaking things in the wake, trying to wear out Zod. But also, and I'm not necessarily saying that he needs to be super concerned with the property of the people around. I just think that's a little funny. But, because I don't know how good the farmer's insurance are going to be. Anyway, their coverage plans might not cover Superman destroying Zod, that's all I'm saying. So, or Superman destroying things, fighting Zod. Anyway, so he takes him to the center of town, and then they have this really big epic fight scene that was really cool looking, and a lot of stuff happened, and the American government shows up and starts destroying things, and I know you know this because you've probably seen the movie, at least you probably have if you're watching this. So I enjoyed the fight scene. I thought the fight scene was really interesting, and visually it was a strong choice to have it in the middle of a small town. But it didn't make a lot of sense to have it in the middle of a small town, because that's where the people are, so why would Clark Kent take him there? That seems like a terrible choice on the part of a guy who's concerned about saving others. He would take them to an uninhabited place. That's what would happen. And that's why it bothers me. I think the collateral damage that happens in and around that area, like surely, people are dying as a result of this. Going indoors doesn't solve the problem, especially not if he's being smashed through buildings. He just miraculously, nobody gets hurt. I find it interesting how crashing airplanes happen to crash down Main Street instead of into the surrounding buildings. Terrific targeting, I guess, by the broken planes being thrown down the middle of the street. Whatever. I thought those were convenient. I thought it was a little too convenient. And it would have made more sense had this happened in the middle of a field, that these things could have gone anywhere. So, again, I enjoyed the fight scene, but that I didn't think made a lot of sense. Now, a lot of the collateral damage that happens in the movie later, it is what it is. Superman can control it, and I understand, and I completely approve. I just think that maybe they needed to highlight it. Maybe it was just a little too subtle. I feel like Superman flying to destroy the terraforming device on the other end of the planet is evidence of the fact that he understands that collateral damage is going to happen, and he just has to defeat the Kryptonians as quickly as he can. So he goes through and he destroys all this stuff, and people die during it. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I think they could have highlighted the internal struggle just a little bit more, as opposed to just assuming that we were coming along with the movie. Like, well, no, I get it, but I want to see his struggle. I don't want to see a cold choice. I want to see a guy have a moment. That's what I wanted. So, I love this terraforming device. I think it's interesting. And now, I don't know if maybe I've seen it in several movies recently, or if I've just seen it in several movies recently, because I watched Wrath of Khan and other things with these terraforming devices that I think are kind of interesting. They're neat. They're neat. And I don't mind it. I didn't mind it in this movie. I just thought, wow, man, why is it that everything I'm watching has a terraforming device? I think it's funny. I think this terraforming device was really interesting. The idea of trying to change the density of the planet and trying to, just this gravity thumping thing. I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting visual choice. And it was handled really well. Now, I kind of questioned if they had this terraforming device that could change a planet into an inhabitable planet, why Earth? Why that one? Why not head to Mars? Why not find another galaxy and do this? And furthermore, if they have these terraforming devices that they have found on other planets with the remains of Kryptonians, Why is it that the terraforming devices didn't work on those other planets? Maybe I missed something in the movie, but I found that questionable. Why is it that they have this technology, they went out and explored? How is it that they haven't repopulated the galaxy with Kryptonians? I thought that was really odd. So maybe I missed it, maybe I need to watch it again, but I didn't see any reason for why number one, why they couldn't have established themselves on other planets. And furthermore, why they needed to establish themselves on Earth. I didn't quite see that. I could understand going to Earth and wanting to get Kal-El. You know, if you went to Earth and said, hey, listen, we need this, whatever they turned Kal-El into. I forget the name of the thing that they broke down and put into his DNA, which I thought was an interesting idea. I questioned its the ability to do that. I thought, is that even possible without fundamentally changing what something is? But if you change its DNA, aren't you changing what it is? So therefore it wouldn't necessarily even look like itself anymore, or even be human, or I suppose in this case Kryptonian. I thought that was a strange thing to do, but I digress. I thought it was an interesting choice. So if they would have said, hey Clark, let's go, or Kal-El, hey Kal-El, let's go to this other planet, we need you to help repopulate the Kryptonian race, I think that Kal-El would have said, okay. Then the movie would have been over, essentially. They would have went to another planet. So why Earth? Now maybe it's because Earth is the most inhabitable planet in that particular galaxy, sure, but why couldn't you go to another galaxy? Why do you have to find a planet that is already populated by intelligent life? I mean, granted, I suppose it'd be hard to find a planet that is populated, or that is not populated by intelligent life, that can support life. So maybe, I don't know. But they have a device that terraforms, so why do they need an already formed planet to terraform the planet? Now, maybe there's some tech that they didn't put in the movie, or maybe I just missed it, as I said a minute ago. But I don't understand why it has to be on that planet. And I guess the reason I'm repeating myself right now is I'm saying maybe it needs water and plant life and all these things to work. Maybe these two devices set to terraform the planet need a planet that already has life on it in order to create the environment that it wants. Maybe that's what the idea was. But since they call it a terraforming planet, it forms its own blah blah. Why? Why do they need a planet that's already inhabited by life? So, moving on, one of the things that I found, again, I liked the lack of dialogue. Now, I've said that about comic books before, that when something is interesting, I think it's interesting when creators make things that have less dialogue and let the action speak for itself, and not just action as in fight scenes, but action as in things happening on screen. You know, a string of images gives you the end result. Now, that being said, I thought some of the dialogue was forced and a little silly, just a little silly. Things like, this man is not our enemy. Would a person really say that? Especially a general or whatever he was, a military official, a higher ranking military officer. Why would you walk up to a bunch of guys pointing guns at this person and say, this man is not our enemy? It seems unnatural. It seems more like, especially with how rough and tough they made that particular military guy. Willing to take on a Kryptonian with a knife. I thought that was cool. Which I'll get to in a minute, which I didn't put in my notes, but I should really touch on that. I thought his line of dialogue was really forced, and things like that happened throughout the movie that were just placed in the movie. They didn't necessarily belong in the movie. It seemed like a melodramatic choice for what little dialogue was there. The man could have walked up and said, stand down, just give it up, okay? Or he could have just walked up and given these guys the cue, because he did just have his life saved by Superman. So he goes over to Superman and says, hey, thank you. And that's all that needed to be said. I mean, we can tell by that they're willing to work with this man, but having the melodramatic line, I guess maybe they thought it was more dramatic, but for my palate, it's melodramatic. It was unnecessary. Now, oh, the thing that I wanted to touch on. I loved how the humans in this movie were really interesting people. I thought that the humans in this movie, of course, they didn't trust something that seemed good. And it's very indicative of how we see ourselves as a human race, at least at this time. We are untrusting. Fair enough. It's fair. You can't expect someone to inherently trust something that's new and more powerful than it is, or than anything that you know how to defeat it with. It's this person shows up and says, "Hey, I am super powerful, and I'm on your side." Are you? Or are you playing the system? I mean, we're existing in a time in which we refuse to trust our own government, and you know what? I think it's important to question everything. I don't want to make this political, but I'm just saying we exist in a time period where most war movies are anti-war, and where most movies that involve the government, it's about the government doing something kind of cruel or shady. Right now, I'm watching Justice League Unlimited, and that's the entirety of most of what season 1 is, and so far everything I've seen in season 2. So it's all about the government not being trustworthy. So I thought it was interesting that the question is whether or not this guy's trustworthy, and the government's trying to figure it out. I thought that was an interesting choice. Now, maybe they'll go somewhere in the future, and I don't care if they do or not. I mean, it's a brave choice, is what I'm saying, is to make the government, to make humanity look like the good guy. It's almost atypical at this point, so I applaud these people for doing that. I really enjoyed that about this movie. Now, maybe I'll skip down and tackle this other thing here. Let's see here. Lois Lane. I thought Lois Lane, this might be the first time I ever liked Lois Lane. It's a possibility that this is the first time I've ever liked Lois Lane. And Lois Lane in some of the previous movies, in the cartoon show, like in the previous movie she seemed a little dim, shall I say. In the cartoon show she seemed a little cruel. She was just kind of selfish, and I don't understand. Like, here's what I'm thinking, and I wrote this here so I wouldn't forget this. This Lois Lane, as well as Lois Lane's before her, sounded weird, but this Lois Lane and other incarnations of Lois Lane are successful, they're intelligent, and they're driven. Now, the thing that sets her apart, this Lois Lane from Man of Steel, as opposed to the ones from the cartoon show, from the comics, and other things, is that this Lois Lane is compassionate and understanding, and has a moral compass that is not about selfishness or trying to get information out there regardless of what the information, or regardless of the impact of the information. I thought that was interesting. A reporter with morals. Terrific. And I love the fact that Perry White said, "Hey, listen, whatever it is that you have found out that you're unwilling to share, you're probably doing it for the right reasons." And I thought it was also interesting that he was saying that she needed to have some punishment as a result of her actions, but he was also commending her for making a morally just choice. I thought that was interesting. That was a terrific thing to put in the movie. And yeah, so boom, marking that off my list. Now we're going to go up here and come back to the dialogue thing. One of the things there was another line in the movie that bothered me specifically, and most of it I didn't care about. I still enjoyed the movie regardless of some of this forced dialogue. I didn't feel like they did anything with the dialogue that was inappropriate. I just thought it was a little forced, kind of words put into a character's mouth when a more natural choice could have been selected. But the soldier lady, whose name I forget and should have looked up before I started this, but anyway, you know what I mean. The Kryptonian second-in-command lady. She said to Kal-El, like, your morality makes you weak, we don't have any morality. Something to that effect. And I thought that was questionable. I loved the idea that it's your morality that makes you weak. It's your human morality that makes you weak. And then she says, we don't have morality. That's I doubt that. I doubt that's true. Because why would you be able to make decisions independent of a governing body if you didn't have some kind of compass, regardless of whether or not that morality was extended to other groups of people? It obviously wasn't extended to humans, but I would say that they had morality that was extended to Kryptonians. Now, I could say that unless what these people are is just automatons and they're following rules, but if that's the case and people are bred to be soldiers, if people are genetically engineered on Krypton, or at least were genetically engineered on Krypton to be soldiers, then that implies that they're genetically engineering officers, as opposed to people like this second in command lady, because Zod was able to make choices independent of a governing body. Granted, this second in command lady seems to just be following orders, but she seems to agree with Zod. She seems to think that his choices are correct, and I find it questionable that they would genetically engineer someone to be the perfect soldier who has no whose actions are set forth prior to their birth, without also instilling some need to 100% obey the governing bodies. Because you would genetically engineer like if the race was genetically engineered, you would make it a well-oiled machine. You would have a government that rules over its automatons. Now, all I can really think here from this point is that the automatons, they're not automatons, because obviously Zod was able to make a choice and was able to try to have a coup with the governing bodies on Krypton. So I feel like that's a little too convenient. Like maybe what they're saying is you cannot genetically engineer things perfectly. Maybe that's what they're saying, and maybe that's all it is. And maybe that was the entire significance for making this a part of this movie, because I didn't feel like the genetic engineering of its race was played out enough in the movie. I thought we needed more about it, more significance for it. And the big significance that I saw being applied to it was that Superman was, essentially a master of his own destiny. The reason he could defeat Zod is because he wasn't born to be a soldier. He wasn't born to be a scientist. He was born to be a man, a Kryptonian man, but still. And he was born to be whoever he wanted to be, and thereby he had a chance to defeat Zod, because Zod's power, Zod's entire physiology is made up to be a soldier. It's not to be a diplomat, it's not to be a scientist, it's to be a soldier. And now we have Superman, this guy who is designed to be whatever he wants to be. And I thought that was fair enough. I thought that was an okay choice. I thought we needed more about what the politics are of Krypton to really tell us what the importance of this genetic engineering of these people are. And so I just thought it was interesting that basically the bottom line is the genetic engineering was to physically alter these people to the point that they are capable soldiers. But they're not automatons. They can make their own choices. So thereby, I don't feel like this nature over nurture argument holds water. I feel like what it's really saying, I always thought it was interesting that Superman could, I always thought it was an interesting nurture argument, but this movie's trying to make it a nature argument, and I don't think it works. I mean, maybe I missed something. I will admit that maybe I missed something. But I don't consider... Because Superman even says, I'm as American as it gets. I grew up in Kansas, for crying out loud. Well, that's a nurture argument right there. And sure, he's a natural birth, and he can be whatever he wants to be. But I also think that Zod making a choice 100% to go against the government on Krypton. Now, granted, there is this need to protect his race, his people, that has been instilled in him by the genetic engineering of Kryptonians. So that's what he's making his choice with. But you know what? I think that everybody on that planet was probably doing that. The government said to themselves, I need to preserve the law, and that's how I preserve these people. And the scientists said, we need to look for threats that are not just from other planets or from other people, and we need to look for threats within. So we have these scientists, and we have these diplomats, these governing bodies, and then we have the military, and essentially they are all trying to preserve the Kryptonian race, and they have conflict over it because they can't agree with each other. Which means that I think that again, it means either the Kryptonian, it means that either the genetic engineering of Kryptonians is 100% not effective. Well, not 100%. I'm sorry. I'm being hyperbolic at the moment. Which means that it's either not effective in general in the long run, or it's saying that maybe what it's saying. I'm kind of thinking this through just now. This is an idea. Maybe what it's saying is that genetically engineer. You can genetically engineer something physically perfectly, but you cannot control its personality. You cannot control its life as it grows up. But maybe it's even saying that genetically engineering something potentially creates a situation that will create extremes for this person, and he will develop underneath those ideals. So maybe it's not even that they're setting forth these actions, because I don't feel like you could genetically engineer someone. If their actions are set forth, you would 100% say they do not have free will. And I don't think that holds water anyway. I think it's really interesting. I think it's worth being in this movie, and I think this movie is worth seeing it because of those ideas. Because of those ideas, and because it's a really cool-looking movie. So it's lots of fun, whether or not you want to try to cerebralize it, or if you want to sit there and say, this is pretty. I can't wait to see what happens next. So those are some ideas. I'm just thinking it through. I don't think that I think the opening of the movie had too many fight scenes to really show you enough about Krypton. I felt like too much of it was action-oriented. Now, something that kind of bothers me is that if genetic engineering is even relevant to say that we have people who are meant to be soldiers and we have people who are meant to be scientists, how is it that Jor-El could kick the... well... I can't say that. How is it that Jor-El can beat up and engage several different soldiers who are genetically engineered to be soldiers, but can't defeat a scientist who is engineered to be a scientist? That's what his stock and trade is. Now, I said that to Cap, and Cap said, but he's wearing a battle suit. I'm like, yeah, but presumably so is everyone. So he makes himself more ready for it, but that doesn't mean he could engage several assailants. I don't think that's possible. I mean, well, maybe it is possible. Maybe Jor-El has spent his entire life trying to break this thing where he is just a scientist. Maybe he's also trying to be a great military, or trying to make his body more physically military-esque. Militant, I don't know, fit to be a soldier. But I always thought that was kind of a strange, or always, since I saw that movie, I thought, this is really weird. If they're genetically engineering people, why did they do that? Now, the villain motive was really neat. Oh my god. I thought that was such a great, strong choice. Zod being a villain, like, in past incarnations of Zod, we've seen Zod just try to be power mad. He just wanted to control things. And, you know, as cool as it was in the Donner movie, I always thought it was just a little weak of a choice. Sure, he wants control. So does every madman. This guy had a reasonably noble motive. I mean, he's trying to preserve his race. He's trying to set up on another planet. Again, I question, why does it have to be Earth specifically? Sure, why does it have to be Earth specifically? But I love the fact that he's willing to sacrifice another race to save another race, to save his own race. I think that's a strong choice. And so bravo to the writers of this movie. Okay, yep, I really like the Kryptonian tech. I thought it was cool. Yeah. Oh, I've already covered some of this stuff. Yeah. I really liked this computerized Jor-El. I thought that was a really strong choice. I thought, especially allowing him to have control of a ship, I thought that was really neat. And especially allowing him to shut doors, that motion that he did, and the doors would shut, I thought that was cool. And I love that he can guide people. And oh, and I also really enjoy the scene. I'm just trying to get out there. There's stuff in here that's really neat. Just strong choices. The exchanges that Jor-El has with Zod is really neat. Well, the one exchange that Jor-El has, or that computerized Jor-El has with Zod is really neat. The exchange that Jor-El has with Zod on Krypton, living Jor-El has with Zod on Krypton, are really neat. The exchanges that computerized Jor-El has with Superman are really neat. One thing that I think is a missed opportunity is, why do we always have to kill off Jonathan Kent? Why does he have to die? I thought it would have been really neat to have a computerized Jor-El Jonathan Kent conversation. I thought that'd be cool. I wanted to see that. They didn't do it. I'm not missing it. Well, I guess I am missing it, but it wasn't necessary. I'm not begrudging them that. I just think that would have been kind of neat. Anyway. It would have allowed for more range to be had. It would have allowed for a deeper scope of emotions coming from Jonathan Kent, and I thought that was interesting. So I thought that any explanation, I feel like the explanation for why Jor-El and Lara did not go with Kal-El to Earth is still a little questionable. If they knew the planet was exploding, why not just build a bigger ship? They stayed as long as they could to try to get the Council to agree to doing certain things that might save the Kryptonian race. So Jor-El tries to save it the only way he knows how, by launching his son to another planet, to hopefully, potentially be taken care of by mystery people. He doesn't know. He doesn't know who's going to grab him. I thought that was kind of an odd... Still didn't quite work in this movie, as it doesn't quite work in past Superman mythos. Not to say that it's never worked, but never in the things that I've read or watched. But I thought it could have worked. I really did. And I feel like they just needed a little bit of convenience removed. Like, for example, I think that that Lara and... I think that there should have been space for Lara to go. I think there should have been space for Lara to go. And I don't want to sit here and rewrite this scene in this movie, but I feel like if you would have given a chance for one of them to leave with Kal-El, and if you would have given a chance... or even if you would have given them more weapons to try to defend off the invading forces, Zod's forces, onto Jor-El's, I don't know, apartment, home, compound, I'm not sure what they would call it. But I thought it was kind of odd that the convenience of the Kryptonian government showing up and shooting down Zod's... like, during that scene, I was like, why don't they just try to shoot the pod down or catch the pod? Or they scanned the building and knew that there was a ship on the building. Well, why didn't they just look at the building and then block the exit for the small ship that Jor-El was getting ready to launch? I thought that was kind of strange. They walk in, they say, hey, there's a ship that's being prepared to launch. Well, why not just block the ship? And furthermore, as soon as they launched it, I thought, well, they at least ought to shoot it down, and then they tried to. And the thing that prevented it, I would have forgiven some of these, or I would have forgiven Lara and Jor-El staying behind if one of them had been incapacitated to the point that he or she could not have joined, and then the other one had to defend the ship as it was being launched into space. That, I felt, was not handled particularly well. It was these two people stayed behind and tried to launch their son into space. For no particular reason did they both have to stay behind. Anyway. I thought it was interesting. Now, Zack Snyder movies have always had a ridiculous amount of slow motion, and Cap and I completely disagree on this stuff, but I'll say it anyway. We're nearing the end, folks. We're getting pretty close. But the lack of slow motion in this movie, I thought, was a brave choice, because Zack Snyder has, I believe, used it as a crutch in the past. 300 and Watchmen had, I think, too much slow motion. When you use something greater than the amount that... or when you overuse something, you take away its meaning. You take away its significance. If I were to sit here and say the F word every couple minutes, its shock value or its comedic value or its addition to... I suppose you could also say that as shock value. Anyway, if I were to sit here and use the F word every couple minutes, its effect would be taken away, because you think, oh, he just uses that word. Well, and I kind of feel like if you're going to use slow motion a lot, you might as well just read a comic book, because why am I watching a movie about still pictures? That's not what a film's about. Slow motion should mean something. But that being said, I applaud Zack Snyder for trying something different. I also think that he needs to learn a happy medium. There needs to be a little bit of slow motion in his movies, because they're a lot of the time they're kind of a kinetic mess, maybe you would call it. There's a lot of motion, and I think that some slow motion... Now, maybe there was slow motion in this movie, and I didn't quite pick up on it because it was so well integrated, and if that's the case, then bravo! But I kind of feel like Zack Snyder would have benefited from using that tool that he has overused in the past. He might need it as a little bit of a benefit anyway. Now... that being said, I think that they made a choice on how to handle the camera work that was a weak choice, and it made the movie hard to watch. It made certain things hard to see. Why did every scene have to be on a shaky cam? Why was that something that was done? That was silly. It's unnecessary. You guys are making a multi-million-dollar movie here. Why not just put the thing on a tripod? Just the idea that one of those heavy old cameras will go on a tripod. But I think that it's kind of funny that that he didn't use any slow motion. And I think it's also a terrible choice. I think it's funny that he didn't use slow motion. I think the movie would have benefited from it. And I think it's a terrible choice to do handycam throughout the whole movie. I think the handycam on the boat was an interesting idea. I think the handycam on the helipad where he had to save the men was an interesting idea. I think handycam on varying spots throughout the movie would have been a good choice. But handycam throughout the movie, especially in the scene where I can't believe I did that again. Especially in the scene where Jor-El is explaining Kryptonian history to Kal-El. Why use handycam? Why not just allow the audience to see it in all of its glory? Why make it shaky? But that was a weak choice. Anyway. Now, I kind of feel like you could potentially, when people do choices like that, film choices, I feel like there needs to be some reason to do it. Otherwise, you should do it in the most clear form possible. Like, I forget the movie, and I always bring this up when I talk about this type of stuff, but I forget the name of the movie. We studied it in one of my film courses, where the director would film... There was a character in his movie that was... in said movie, whatever the title of the movie is, I forget, where the character was progressively becoming more and more psychologically unsound, and every time the director would film him, especially in close-ups, he would make it just a little blurrier, just a little harder to see, to show that there is a little bit of a loss of a grip on a handle of reality here. And I think that's interesting. Now, I feel like any reason to use shaky cam throughout an entire movie is more just a style choice, and I think that too should be a tool in a filmmaker's toolbox. It shouldn't be, let's use this as the conceit for the movie. No, that's not a conceit, it's a tool. Just use the tool when it's necessary, or when it would add something to the scene, not all of the time. Let's see, especially when it could make someone seasick, I don't know. The ending, again, I I said this was a spoiler review, so let's talk about the ending for a minute. Oh my goodness. Now, in the past, whenever I've seen Superman kill someone in a cartoon show, Superman has always kind of turned into a raging monster afterward. A totalitarian dictator who has put the kibosh on all crime and has also put the kibosh on all exercising the need for free will or the ability to exercise actions that are dictated by free will. So thereby, I like that this movie puts Superman in the choice. You can either do this, or you can let people. You can either kill someone, or you can let people die, exchanging one life for the lives of the many. And I thought that was really interesting, and I love that he did, because there are things that it's one of my biggest pet peeves. When you watch an entire TV show or an entire movie, and the question is, will he or won't he kill that guy? And when they decide that they get to the end and they decide not to kill the character, or when they decide that Superman can't kill Zod, or which of course he did, or they decide that Aang can't kill the Fire Lord, when they decide that these things cannot happen, they ultimately say, we need to be more clever. So it bothers me when somebody develops a new power out of the blue, or conveniently beats someone, and it bothers me when it's not natural. It bothers me when it's said, well, because we cannot let our guy kill someone, we have to come up with another way to do it. So they just change reality all of a sudden. And that bothers me. So that's why I applaud this movie for being brave enough to say that Superman can kill someone and not thus go overboards afterwards. I think that maybe it's the visual lock, because it seems to be Superman, when he directly sees someone about to die, he can't just let him die in this movie. And, it's a redeemable quality. And he says, man, that guy's falling out of a helicopter, I need to go catch him. And he says, well, Zod is Zod's knocking me through buildings, Zod's causing me to have to really try to hurt him at the expense of the potential lives, or the potential expense of the lives around him in these varying buildings that they're knocking down. So maybe it's that all of the action has come to a halt, and Superman has him in his grip, and Zod is trying to kill people that Superman can see, and Superman says, I have only one choice. Either they're going to die or he's going to die. And if I don't kill him now, he will kill others, not just those people. So maybe it's the fact that he could see those other people, and it was the threat of direct lives that made Superman able to, or at least presumably able to, because of course that's like the second from last scene in the movie. It made Superman more able to compartmentalize and say, this is an event that will happen that I need to not let myself do ever. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's that visual connection. So final thoughts. I like this movie a lot. I thought there was a lot of really interesting choices. I thought there was a lot of really strong choices in this movie, and I think it's entirely worth people seeing. But again, if you're watching this review, hopefully you have seen the movie. Hopefully you have seen the movie. And so the thing about that movie is that there's lots of strong choices, there's lots of good choices, there's lots of interesting things about the movie, but also there are what I would consider to be inconsistencies and things that don't necessarily hold with characters, things that are a little bit questionable in the plot that could have been explained away had they spent a little more time, a little less time fighting, and a little more time with being more clever. I just think that they could have put less fighting in the movie, which the fighting was cool, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the fighting a lot. But the movie suffers from having too much action and not enough drama. So, yeah. The biggest thing that I think I have to applaud this movie for is, regardless of whether or not my complaints are valid. It doesn't matter. What really matters is that this movie is a step in the right direction that Superman movies need to go. They need to put Superman in a situation. I was just saying this to someone about 2 weeks ago in regards to this movie that I had not seen at that point. But I said a Superman movie needs to... It bothers me when people say... I'll say this, okay? I'm sorry, that was a little scatterbrained. But it bothers me, it really does, when people say that a Superman movie doesn't make any sense. Superman's not a worthwhile character because he's too powerful. So, it doesn't matter if he's too powerful, because the result of his being too powerful means that the story is not about whether or not Superman can be defeated. The story is about whether or not Superman can do everything he needs to do. It's whether or not Superman can save everyone who needs to be saved, or complete all the tasks that need to be completed before the cutoff, and then bad things happen. So, that's what a Superman movie needs to be, and that's what this was. Superman had to make a choice that was about, am I going to save every individual person, or am I going to go forth and try to stop these bad guys? I thought that was great. And also, the thing that's a step in the right direction is that a Superman movie needs to be science fiction. It can't just be an action movie. It can't just be a couple guys hitting each other and then one of them either is or is not defeated. It needs to be a science fiction movie, and this movie was a science fiction movie. So I heavily applaud the step in the right direction, or maybe it's even a leap in the right direction based on what we had in the past. Not to say that the Donner movies aren't good. I really enjoyed Superman 1 and 2, but especially Superman 2, the Donner cut. But anyway, it's worthwhile what's been in the past. I think that this is more of what Superman needs to be, and I feel like this can be the front runner for potentially more sci-fi oriented, or science fiction oriented rather, Superman movies. So guys, thanks for watching Geekvolution, and I don't know how long this video has been, but I feel like my voice is getting hoarse and I've been here forever. So you guys have a great day, and thanks for watching Vince vs.